group in the European Parliament. My name is Thomas Waits. I'm the co-president of the European Green Party, and together we will moderate this session now as we will move on now to civil society and to real life experience, as this is, I would say, key for our societies to see, and we have very interesting guests that will join us here on stage. And so for this, I will immediately hand over to Terry to introduce, and then we'll moderate through this session. So please stick with us, and if you want to talk, maybe leave the room so we can hear each other really well. There is translation also, so if you still need to, it will be partly in Polish, partly in English, so get your sets for translation ready. Okay, Terry, floor is yours.
First, I would ask our wonderful panelists to come on stage. We are going to introduce you later, but we can already have a seat here because we have imagined this session to be
wherever you like.
To be maybe imagined like we are sitting in a warm and very cozy living room next to a fireplace, potentially, where we are going to speak about life stories that have inspired politics, that have moved us forward. And I think, especially speaking as a parliamentarian, I can say that what kind of possibilities we have to bring about change is very often largely dependent on exactly these stories that we are going to hear today, because the space of what you can do in a parliament or what you can do in politics obviously resonates in what is possible in society, what kind of movements are bringing topics to the street, what kind of demands are being put forward. And we have 4 absolutely fantastic examples where you can very concretely see how people in different ways have influenced the political debate and with that influenced politics. And I wanted to maybe start by sharing one personal story of mine so that I can set the scene a little bit before we go to our panelists. And some of you might know this. Not so long ago, about 6 years ago, I shared in the European Parliament a story of an experience, a very horrible experience of sexual harassment that I had had. And I was speaking in the plenary about this, I was explaining it, and I said we need to find political solutions, we need to find answers to this kind of experience that a lot of women and a lot of people are facing. And I was asked afterwards by some people, or some people were outraged by the fact that I would tell such a story in a plenary, you know, where big politics is supposed to be talked about. And I think that the reactions of a lot of people actually reinforced me in the belief that telling these personal stories is absolutely crucial so that people can connect with politics, because only through these stories people understand what is at stake when we take political decisions, what are the issues that we have to tackle, and then also how we can work together with activists, with citizens, but also then obviously from the political side for better societies. So for me personally, but I think also for the wonderful people who are today with us here in this panel, this is one of the very important parts of how to shape politics, and we are very happy to listen to these stories, and then after listening to them also giving you the possibility to ask questions to them. And the first person that I would like to introduce is, sorry, now I have chaos. It's Dominika Lasota, and Dominika is basically, as I was told, the face of climate action in Poland. She has been very active in the Fridays for Future movement here, obviously taking topics that are very crucial to the street, but then also bringing them back, for example, in the COP in Glasgow, and confronting leaders with the issues and with the inaction that we still see when it comes to climate matters. And Dominika is, I think, one of a generation, I would even call it, that has really changed the way how we approach politics, that has made things possible that beforehand were not possible. And this is why we are very happy that you are here with us and that you are going to share your story with us. Welcome, Dominika.
Hi, everyone. And thank you, Terry, for, I would say, an overly kind introduction. Today is 3rd March, 2023. Today is the global climate strike in many countries. But today it's also a very important day for me because exactly a year ago, on the 3rd of March, we organized what was probably one of the most crazy and spontaneous protests ever in my life. We organized the first embargo demonstration ever here in Warsaw, together with Wiktoria Androszkowiak, who's here, and many of other climate activists from Poland and Ukraine. And that was a very important event for me, I think, because that was the first time that the youth climate movement, Fridays for Future, has called for strikes around the world, because they happened in over 60 locations, that would connect the war and the climate crisis around its common source, the fossil fuel industry. That was exactly 1 week since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and that marked the start of our fight here, a different fight than the common climate struggle, I would say. Because here in Poland, here in Warsaw, and in Eastern Europe, I would say that the context, the environment, and the way politics work, the way we have to do our activism is much, much more different than for Western Europe. For us, with a history of multiple wars, with a history of a very tough communist regime that we've had for 45 years, for us with a history of imperialism, of occupation, of being a divided country, divided by other empires from the whole of Europe, the idea of, fighting for human rights, for security, for all of these big, big words, it is different than on other regions. It is, I would say, a bit tougher, but it also makes you feel like, okay, this is a real fight, and if we win, then everything is possible in other regions. That's why I'm very thankful to you for coming here in Warsaw, but I also would love you to think for a second why you came here. Why you see something in this place, why you see something in this region. Because unfortunately, I think for many years, we've been called by other European states the climate blockers of the whole Europe. We've been called the backward ones. We've been called the country that's, just pulling everyone a step backwards rather than a step forwards. And I think, unfortunately, by seeing us in such a simplistic, negative way, you do not see the struggle that is happening here, and you do not see also the lessons and the inspiration that you can draw from here. Because, climate is important, obviously, but here in Poland, the end of the month is much more terrifying for people than the end of the world. And that is the reality. And so right now, how do we lead that fight, and how do we even, fight for climate action, for justice and all of that, if we as a society are in such more vulnerable and tough position? For us, we have to really think back, before emission reductions, whatever, how do we really protect our people? And this is the question that I ask myself daily. But fortunately, I think, even though we are a very difficult place to fight, there are some incredible, I would say, seeds of massive, massive hope for me. One of such seed is the Ukrainian resistance. Because in Ukraine, like our friends there, they are not just fighting an invasion, they are fighting against, they really, proving to us what it means to fight for freedom, for security, for sovereignty. And they are fighting against a fossil fuel empire, because Putin, the money that he has for the war, for that aggression, comes directly from oil, from gas, from coal, that Europe and Western Europe especially, and Poland included, have been buying from him for decades and are still profiting from it. So that's one thing. Looking east to Ukraine, to the struggle of the people there, because that is my biggest inspiration. But another inspiration for me in leading that fight are my friends who are also here with us today, Andrzej, Jerzy, Robert, miners. I mean, I hope they are my friends. I don't know. I do not want to assume. But for me, this is an incredible story of people who are fighting for securing that end of the month for their people, for other workers of the fossil fuel sector, of the coal sector. Because unfortunately, against all of those beautiful narratives of our government that Poland has its black gold and that it will stay in coal forever, the people that are actually in that sector are right now at risk of losing their livelihoods, their source of income, their security, because the mines are closed in a completely tragic way, in a way without any idea, without any guarantee of safety. But they are fighting. They have been trying all sorts of things to secure their coal mine, to secure the workers, and they are with us today. And I think this is incredibly important that the climate movement, the Greens, us, we go hand in hand with them, because their rights, the trade unions protection, the trade unions are incredibly, we have to go hand in hand. Their interest, their fight is our fight. Just as the Ukrainian fight, their fight is our fight. So that is my second seed of hope. It's the people in the sector. And the third seed of hope, and this is my biggest question, is that we all in Poland ask ourselves, now with the extreme cost of living, with the inflation, that is, again, due to the energy sector, the high energy prices, and the fact that the fossil fuel companies, the energy state companies, are just robbing us and are able to earn record profits. How do we really fight together as a society to combine, to answer that fear of the end of the month and of the end of the world? How do we make sure that the climate action, the just transition, and securing that people are able to survive from one month to another, and that their future isn't despair? How do we do that? And that I don't know. And that is the big question for us right now. That is a question that we have to answer in the election year. And for that, we need courageous people. The Ukrainians are courageous people. The amazing miners that are fighting to show us how just transition should really look are amazing, bold people. But we also need bold political leaders. And that is the question, that is my question to all of the representatives here of the European Greens, of the Polish Greens. Do you really show us the courage, the boldness that we need? Is that fight, do you give everything to that fight? Because sometimes, unfortunately, I have a feeling that some internal arguments, internal different dramas, social media dramas, whatever, that they take over and they are more important than that struggle, which is the biggest struggle that we're facing. And I also often think, unfortunately, that the Greens really don't treat themselves as seriously as they could. Because come on, guys, you're trying to tackle the most important crisis that we're facing. Because the climate crisis, it's about everything. And in order to tackle that crisis, being an addition to the bigger opposition parties, that's not how you fight the most important fight that we are facing. Social media dramas, internal dramas, whatever, this will not really solve the deal here. And so I know that there is, and I see a seed of hope in you, because you chose this path, and I know that it is, not many people do that, not many people choose to fight for justice, for security for all. But as the elections are coming up for us this autumn, as the European elections are coming up for next year, I really hope and I really urge you to just step up. Step up, because we do not have any more time to wait for you to show the courage that is needed to just, build that other world that is possible, that other reality that is possible, that is free from autocracy, from dictators, from fossil fuels. It is possible, but we need you as courageously as possible. Yeah.
I think that's a very powerful call, and that's already something that we will then take with us in the preparation of what's to come there. I would have one question still for you, Dominika. I mean, as Greens, as you know, we are fighting the fight, we are in the streets, we are struggling, but sometimes we are also in power. And most of the time when you are in power, you have to make compromise. And very often this compromise is not good enough. You are from the climate movement, and I think you have probably also gone through a certain level of frustration with politicians. How do you think we can bridge this frustration that we share, but that sometimes I think creates a certain level of tension and friction between maybe politicians and activists?
I mean, just to bring a short anecdote, very recently we had a debate in the parliament about unblocking the wind sector in Poland, because since 8 years our government is blocking wind turbines from being built here. And we're at the commission with Victoria, there is the climate minister of our country, there are many important politicians from the government who obviously have been, the majority of them have been blocking the wind turbines, but the climate minister actually, for once, she proposed a good bill, but then it was overturned by her friends from the party, and then we ended up, still having the wind turbines, the wind sector blocked. And when we approached her and we asked, like, why is it that you allowed them to rip apart your law? And she said to us, straight in the face, with age you learn to compromise. And then I thought, that we very often hear it from the politicians. And unfortunately, there are two sides to it, I think. One is, I do understand when you see a bigger picture and you see that sometimes you have to lose one fight in order to win another fight that will perhaps be more strategic, will still get us closer to security, to that transition, etc., etc. But the other thing that unfortunately I do not understand and I do not tolerate is how politicians are still trying to legitimize and go hand in hand with the fossil fuel industry under the name of compromises. Because this is what is happening in Poland when the Law and Justice is saying we have to compromise. No, you don't have to compromise. What you are actually doing is protecting the benefits of the fossil fuel CEOs. This is what you're doing. You do not want to ruin the businesses of your friends. Let's be clear on that. And similar thing happened, I would say, in Germany, unfortunately, where we had seen green politicians making a deal with RWE, so the main fossil fuel company of Germany. And we're suddenly seeing that the deals done with that company are the priority, and after the big fight of the movement in Luzrat and in other places, we see that what comes after is that, after the German government has secured the deal for coal phase out until 2030, then RWE comes out and says, actually, we might be still digging coal until 2032, disregarding the governmental deal. And obviously, I'm not an expert in the national politics of Germany. I'm not trying to be, but what I'm just saying is that at the end of the day, making deals and trying to be friends with the evil that is the fossil fuel industry will really get you nowhere. And I think, compromises that at the end of the day will really just benefit the industry rather than the people is something that you have to think through twice.
Thanks a lot. Speaking about...
Dziękuję bardzo. Kiedy mówimy o firmach od energii kopalnej, to jest dobry pomost, przejście do drugiej osoby, która zabierze głos. Nina de Pater z Milieudefensie. Kiedy czytałam życiorys tej osoby, uderzające było dla mnie, że w Wageningen na uniwersytecie się ta osoba zaangażowała.
Parliament Kim van Sparentag from the Netherlands. So it seems to be a very engaging university that gets people to be interested in politics, which is very good. And then with the background in environmental policy that you gained there and economics, basically you started an initiative to sue Shell. And this is certainly very interesting, talking about how we can challenge fossil fuel companies and maybe what is the lesson learned also from us as Greens. Nina, very happy to have you here. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for this introduction. Yeah, indeed, I started my activism in university in Wageningen, and although it is a place where a lot of activists or a lot of students become activists, it's also a university that has two faces, I would say. It's the agricultural university in the Netherlands. And actually today I read an article, someone sent me an article from their website explaining why they still cooperate with fossil fuel companies and why they still take money from fossil fuel companies. And on the website they stated, because we need them, they are part of the solution. And that reminded me of the fight that we had years ago at the university, where we collected a lot of signatures from students and from faculty staff, asking the university to break the ties with the fossil fuel industry, because as long as they are paying you, you cannot really resist them. Well, apparently this campaign was not that successful as we hoped. That's the thing with students, they leave and then hopefully someone takes over. But yeah, I moved on, and May 26 in 2021, something happened that many people thought was impossible. The Dutch District Court in The Hague ordered Shell to reduce its emissions and cut it with 45% in 2030. And not just the emissions in the Netherlands, but the emissions in the whole world. And when I was there at the courtroom when this historic verdict was announced, and I can still get a bit emotional about it, because it was a very long road to get there. As I mentioned, I started protesting the fossil fuel industry when I was a teenager, when I started the university. I've been to the headquarters of Shell. I joined protests in Germany against the coal mines. I've done all of these different types of activism because we have to, because there's not a lot of time left, and the fossil fuel industry is one of the most powerful and one of the biggest in the world. Well, it was not just me. Luckily, there were many others, and one of them is Milieudefensie, the organization that I joined, Friends of the Earth Netherlands. And also Friends of the Earth, Milieudefensie had been in conversations with Shell. They have been protesting Shell. They have been trying to lobby on politicians. They have been tried it all, but it didn't work out. And even when the whole world agreed in Paris that we have to cut the emissions, that we have to stay below 1.5 degree global warming, these fossil fuel companies are still expanding their production. They are still continuing to emit CO2 emissions, which shows that these companies are kind of immune to national policies. When one country is getting a bit too strict for them, they just increase their production elsewhere, and that's the whole problem with multinational companies, that we cannot agree on legally binding restrictions on a global level, so we are bound to the national policies, and these companies are not. And then at some point we realized there's only one thing that we can do that can actually force, in this case, Shell to change its business model, and that is go to court. It is not just countries, it's not just governments that have to take responsibility, that have to increase their ambition, that have to reduce their CO2 emissions, but it is also these companies that are responsible, that have to take their responsibility. For example, Shell has, there's only 4 countries in this world that have a bigger CO2 footprint than Shell. I think we can all imagine which 4 countries, but that shows how powerful and how much impact Shell has on the world. And with Shell there are several other big oil majors. So we concluded there's only one thing that we can do, and that's going to court. Well, luckily we were not alone in this, and I think the picture was already on the screen, but there were 17,000 individual Dutch people that joined the court case as co-plaintiffs, so official plaintiffs in this court case. 17,000 people that were willing to put their name on the summons and say, we are fed up with Shell. We do what we can do. You know, we try to reduce our own footprint. We try to reduce our CO2 emissions. But as long as these companies can just continue business as usual, what is it worth? So with these people and some other organizations, among them also a youth organization, we filed the court case. And it might sound very exciting and very romantic to do a court case, but I think in general, let me paint a picture of what daily work is. It's mostly reading a lot of reports, doing a lot of research, analyzing data, energy data, mostly very depressing stuff, actually. When you have to research the climate crisis, you get more and more depressed, I would say. But luckily, these 70,000 people are my motivation. In the occasions that I meet some of them, that I'm able to talk to them, I am reminded why we are doing this and why it is such an important thing to do and why it is so important to work this late nights to read energy reports that are about why it's so important to use fossil fuels, stuff like that. And in the end, it worked out for the best. We won, and Shell now is forced to stop causing dangerous climate change. There's some very unique things about this verdict that I won't all go into because I could take the whole hour. But I think good to mention is that the judge said also multinational companies with such a big responsibility have to respect human rights. And causing the climate crisis is a violation of human rights. Well, Shell appealed. We're in the middle of the process there, and it could take a couple of more years. And that also shows that you need to have a lot of patience when you do court cases. And patience in the middle of a crisis is terrible. I mean, we don't have the time. We don't have years to do what we have to do to limit the climate crisis. And that's also why I believe that it is not just about winning these court cases and filing these court cases, but they are a symbol for so much more. The fact that we were able to win a court case against one of the richest companies of the world with a very limited budget. We were with a team of 5 people. And when we went to the hearings, Shell was there with a whole army of lawyers. They have one of the most expensive lawyer companies, and we are doing it with 2 lawyers that are extremely passionate. It shows that people can actually win from these fossil fuel companies. And whether that's in court or on the streets or in the political arena, we can all stand up against them. And if you're willing to take a risk, willing to do something that people tell, well, a lot of people told us, you're crazy, you will not be able to succeed. But we carried on, we did it. And after we won the court case, so many people from all around the world came to me and said, you finally gave me hope. There's not a lot of good news in the climate movement, but this was such a big victory that a lot of people got hope again, and they knew that if they would continue their fight, that they might be successful at some point. And I know for sure that we will be successful at some point. So I hope that it didn't just inspire the people that I spoke to, but I also hope that it inspires you in your work, in politics, and well, maybe also the people in this panel. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. An absolutely inspiring story, and I think it also shows again how important an independent judiciary is, because court cases like this would probably not be won in a very politicized judicial system, where basically the powerful can influence what a judge is going to say in the end. Can I just ask you one quick question? When you saw again that companies like Shell are making record profits, even though we had the energy crisis and a lot of fossil fuel companies were saying how bad it is going, what did this do to you?
At first, I think I got extremely angry, and then somehow I was able to use that anger to work even harder. But it shows the real nature of these companies. They use a lot of nice green words, and greenwashing is, I think, their specialty. But in the end, they only care about the profits. And if the profits are in fossil fuels, they will stay within fossil fuels. The fact that these companies make these profits, Shell, I think, the biggest profits in more than 120 years or something. And that is all because the normal people like us are trying to pay our energy bills. People are not able to pay them anymore. People who are cut off from electricity and gas because they are not able to pay their bills, and these companies are just making profits after profits after profits, shows that there's something fundamentally wrong with our system. And the only way to get out of that is by losing the fossil fuel industry and stop relying on gas, oil, and coal.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all that you have been doing. And anger turning into action is also something very powerful. So thanks for that.
Okay, it's on again. Yes, I mean, there were some words that triggered me now, and this was passion and anger, and as many of we green politicians also stem from civil society originally, I think we still share and have more in common that is sometimes obvious. It's this motivation, this passion to get up every day in the morning and to pick up the fight again. And then, we all know we have to make 100 steps a day, but then we fight, and we reach, I don't know, 3, 5, or maybe sometimes 15. And we also share then these moments of frustration, because we all know, that these 15 steps that we reach today are by far not enough. But then comes the moment when kind of our roles also are going different paths. These fights that we fight, these 15 steps that we reach, these few steps towards the right direction we reach, well, we are also trying to keep ourselves going by seeing that as a success. While civil society, and the role of civil society is to point out to the 85 steps that have not been taken today and to keep up the pressure. And at the end of the day, whatever we reach, we basically reach with public opinion. If we have majorities of populations supporting the claim, supporting the cause, supporting the struggle, we can reach stuff. And sometimes we politicians manage to create public pressure. Very often civil society is the level that manages to create that public pressure. And only if we manage to create that public pressure, at the end of the day, we're reaching stuff. And it's this passion and anger, but also the anger that keeps us going beyond frustration. That's we source energy from to get back up in the morning with hope, with passion, but also with anger, and go back to our work and do whatever we can. And just to give a very concrete example, we were fighting hard to give an end to combustion engines. Yeah? And yes, we were compromising, yeah? And we had a result finally in Parliament with a majority. I mean, we're just 10% of the European Parliament. So we found a majority to phase out combustion engine in 2035, which is, well, if you listen to science, clearly too late. But still, this was, okay, we fought it through, we fought hard, we got that result. You know what we hear from Council now, from the governments, from the heads of governments? Well, you know, even if we reach a compromise in so-called trialogue, so Parliament with the Council, we will not enforce this legislation before European elections. And this is then the moment where we again come back with frustration, anger, but we side and attack and keep on going and go back to our work, go back to our activism, and try to, well, move the world as much as we can. And I think in this we have a lot in common in terms of experience, but also in terms of what we're fighting for. So thank you so much for both of your interventions. So actually my actual job is to introduce our next speaker, which is Jana Szostak. I hope I pronounce it rightly, maybe not. You're a Polish Belarusian activist. You're born in Grodno. You took a bit of a different path. You became a very inspiring personality through choosing a different path of activating people, of reaching out to people, and you chose the way of arts. I think you are a PhD student in Poznan, and you're very much, I mean, touched and involved also in everything we have been seeing in Belarus. Belarus now a bit out of the headlines due to that illegal and brutal invasion of Ukraine. But in fact, this is the exact same struggle, and it was like, let's say, the overture for what we've seen happening in Ukraine now. And you're still very involved into that struggle, into supporting all the political activists in Belarus, and to keep up the attention also for the Belarusian case. You chose the way of arts, the cry for Belarus, and you got multiple prizes for that engagement. I think, if I may quote, the weekly Politica recognized you for your cry for Belarus as one of the 10 most important works of arts in the last 30 years. Jana, floor is yours.
Yes. Oh, first of all, I want to invite you to use name Belarus instead Belarusia, because Belarusia comes from Russia, and Belarus comes from Belarus. It's a small thing, but I think real changes comes from small things, right? That's why also I use this image, the red, white flag as Belarusian flag, just to remember you, all of you, maybe you didn't know yet, and Ukrainian flag, because it's our common fight with the regime that consists from Putin and Lukashenko. And unfortunately, they are together. And for me, as a person from Belarus, it's extremely important to tell you to please remember when in the next few months, Lukashenko officially will join to the war. Please remember that those people who, most of them who live in Europe or need to leave Belarus, they use word Belarus instead of Belarusia. They use white, red, white flag instead of green and red flag. And they probably, most of them, together with Ukraine, with democracy and fighting, and they somehow appear in Europe just because of that. Please remember, it's extremely important because, as you may understand, a lot of discrimination will appear more and more in the next month. Oh, but I would like to start actually from these words that I'm not even tired, I'm exhausted. I'm burned out and depressed. And I think it's extremely important to have a courage to speak it loudly, because in our political activist movement or being empathic person, it's normal. Unfortunately, right now, in nowadays times, regime in Belarus exists 27 years, and after falsified elections, European Union put on sanctions, some of them, and then put off them. And unfortunately, European Union didn't understand that actually disaster for our part of the world didn't start 24th of February in 2022. It starts earlier. It starts, for example, in 2020, because Putin used Belarus as a test drive platform to understand and follow how European Union will react to the next falsifications. And for me, it's important that you will remember about it, that it's connected. And real challenges right now connected with the real people in Poland, because millions of newcomers from Ukraine and from Belarus living in Poland, and it's a huge challenge to support them and start to treat them not as a guests but as new citizens. And I would like to invite you as well to make real changes, because together with the civil movement Partizanka, we try to help directly and privately persons who need to leave Belarus, first of all, but also persons from Ukraine. We also help with from practical point of view, and I would like to thank you and show you a small example. For example, with Urszula Zielińska from Partia Zieloni, we stop one of the not fair pushbacks from Polish-Belarusian border. And it's a small things, but please remember, if you are even not a politician or even not yet activist, you can directly help at least one person to give them a food or things another, or just share with your profession. Maybe it's too naive, but I'm a realist and I'm demanding possible. So if you want to join and put a little bit from your heart and time and profession, a little bit piece of solidarity to the political prisoners, to the former political prisoners in Belarus, please contact me. And last but not least, what motivates me? Every day motivates me to wake up and go further. Political prisoners in Belarus. The number of political prisoners in Belarus still grow up. And right now in reality, somewhere 300 kilometers from here, we have more than 1,784 political prisoners. They wear yellow labels as during Second World War, and they are not treated as a human beings in the prisons. What they want, they just want to have a freedom in their country. And every day I made a minute of scream to remember about them. And since war in Ukraine started again, it's also minute of scream for them, for every broken family, for every torture, for every death, for every raped women, and just to remember that minute of scream wake up from lack of power, but somehow it's symbolically maybe minute of scream that brings a hope through anger. So if you want to join, please join symbolically. Minute of scream. Because minute of silence didn't work. For every broken person, raped person, political prisoner, death person in Ukraine.
Thank you, Jana. It's hard to take over after such a moment. Well, first of all, thank you for reminding us that all these struggles and all these crackdowns on civilians, on people that strive for democracy, are all interlinked. Thank you also for advising us in not to remember and not to forget the struggles of all the ones that have been standing up for democracy, for freedom, for the right to express themselves, especially also the prisoners in Belarus. Many of us in the European Parliament have taken mentoring, or it's a strange word, godfathering, you say that in English, so maybe let's use godmothering. I would prefer that. Political prisoners, I do, I think you do, Terry. Neighborhoods, look into your personal surrounding, and I think there's something to do for every one of us, no matter whether you're in a position as we may be from civil society, from politics, or you're just privately living your life. Just watch your perfect surrounding. of dependence that we have brought ourselves into. Some European states are still buying fossil fuels from Russia. Some companies are still present in Belarus, are still contributing to finance the dictatorship, are actually directly contributing to finance the prisons that hold the political prisoners. What would be your advice to all of us here, our Polish guests today, our international guests today? What would be this reality?
It's a hard challenge because we already got information from 2021 about 16 companies that collaborate with the Belarusian regime. I knew that all of them got emails from activist group, from Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, our elected president, and most of them didn't answer yet. So maybe we should remind them as long as it's possible. But you know, it's you know that it's hard question, even when right now Belarus is not on the first pages, even not on the second pages, and maybe would be great if we will remind about it, and if you have an occasion to speak with this factories. And I don't know if you know, but the situation is actually more absurd, because most of factories, and for example, they cut wood, and then this wood ban the European Union. So this become more weird when you start to realize that actually political prisoners directly. And I think just to it's important to remind, if you have an occasion, about it, because it's still unbelievable.
Yeah. Shame them and don't buy from them. I think that's what they...
Yeah, for sure.
That's what they fear most. If they lose their business in the European Union, I think that can create a lot of activity for your activism and for you not giving up, and also for sharing that this is a hard task. Every single, big respect for that. Thank you. And I know this is, we may not like it all too much, but unfortunately, unfortunately, that is not to go a bit deeper into this. We want to welcome. I want to welcome very much Justina. Your second name. You say it. You say it.
Justyna Wydrzyńska.
Thank you. Thank you for helping me. I mean, you're a human rights team focusing very much as there is a huge need on human rights of women, especially on providing a platform for advice, for help when it comes to the right to abortion, but also when it comes to sex education.
Really touched me because it was so get used to this touch of words. For 16 years, I've been aiding abortion in Poland. I am the one of the in Polish hospitals. Polish women are treated by doctors with hostility in condescension. Ukrainian woman, which calls to us, every time ask why it isn't the same procedure as it is in Ukraine. Women being dismissed with the suggestion, try to different hospital. Women who need urgent help sent home by religious fanatics and cowards in white coats. Women travel with us to Netherlands, Belgium, England, France, Germany, Austria, Czech Republic, are very surprised how decently and kindly they are treated in those clinics. However, abortion in foreign clinics outside of Poland is only 1% of those who we normally help. Only 1%. Because there is a better method, the method which is recommended by WHO, and this method is very safe. This is safer than tooth extraction. It is safer than taking the Viagra. This is the abortion pills. This method, according to the WHO, doesn't require a doctor. It can be done at home. It can be done completely by ourselves. So most women around in Poland and around the world use abortion pills to make abortion in their private homes. This is the combination of mifepristone and misoprostol, which can be ordered from international foundation like Women Help Women. These pills, as WHO says, should be available everywhere without any prescription. In 2020, I sent this kind of package of pills to a person who contacted Abortion Without Borders, and for this I'm facing 3 years in a prison. Despite this absurd situation and completely real repression I am facing, I still believe that any person would choose to help other person, and even in a situation of risk on safety. I know I would do it again, and I don't feel any regrets about this. It's never a crime to support other person in need. It's not something that we should be ashamed of. Helping in abortion is necessary, especially when you live in Poland, where access to abortion is provided by informal groups, non-governmental organizations. It's us, the activists, we repair the damage the Polish anti-choice government did. Now, even in cases where abortion is permitted by a law, a Polish hospital is not a place where you can get help or feel safe. Although the doctors, they have all the necessary diplomas, they know everything how to make abortions, and they can't perform them. When they do, they use truly archaic, invasive methods, but most of the time, they will decide not to help. At Abortion Without Borders, we sometimes receive calls from terrified women which are in the hospitals with the risk of sepsis and are slowly dying, but the doctors are waiting until the fetus normally die before they will try to help. This is how Iza from Pszczyna and Agnieszka from Częstochowa died. Helping in abortion minimize the risk of health complications and even minimize the risk of tragic deaths. Helping in abortion in Poland is a must. However, for sending these pills I have sent, mifepristone and misoprostol, I could go to prison in every European country because by providing this kind of pills without a legal license, every European country would give me a court case. European legislation is massively behind the scientific knowledge and recommendations of WHO. Almost every country has its own arbitrary conditions that hinder access to abortion, which is incompatible with the scientific knowledge, but above all, it's incompatible with the needs of women. Abortion can be a part of political games. Abortion law cannot be created by the trades of specific situation that law will allow. Such exceptional situations are sometimes won by progressive parties, sometimes by religious fanatics, but always women lose those games. Helping women requires huge human and financial resources. As Abortion Without Borders, over last 2 years, we have spent over 2 million Polish zloty. on helping women. Abortion costs money, and our network needs funds to be able to provide these safe abortions at the best possible level. Abortion care can be kind of empathic, it can be dignified, and that's the type of care we are fighting for. We receive support from not only from the individual donors, but also from other European countries. Two of them were Belgium and France. Polish and Ukrainian women, especially now during the war and the economic crisis, need such solidarity and such support. I want to really thank you all of those who gave us all those support, and we really appreciate this. And it's truly priceless for all us activists and for the women we could help because of your support.
Thank you so much, Justina. And just to echo it, yes, this was a clear call to all of us. Go out and support these initiatives, support your initiative, and if you can, donate some money. I think every single zloty, every single euro is of help, so no donation is too small. Please hear the call and do it. And Justina, I mean, my question to you is, I find it incredibly inspiring what bravery you're putting here on stage and what you're putting into your work. And I mean, you're living in a country where at least you have parts of society that are very hostile towards your engagement, your activism, your help for women. You're living in a country that is trying to put you on court, or that is putting you on court and threatening you with sentences, with prison sentences. I don't know if you're ready to share, but could you share with us maybe a bit of an insight? What is your source of that bravery? I mean, I see you sitting here next to me, full of energy, full of motivation, and when you say, well, they tried to put me in jail for the next 3 years, it sounds to me as this would not really have an effect, a scaring effect on you at all. Would you share that kind of magic source with us?
It doesn't look, maybe I look that I don't care, but I'm worried, I'm stressed, but I'm not afraid. And this all the motivation comes from the moment I've been in the situation, in unwanted pregnancy, in the very beginning when this was the reason I started to be an abortion activist, and I exactly knew what are the feelings of each person who is contacting us, how desperate they are, how lonely they are, and I still remember the feeling that I really wanted somebody to tell me how it will be looking like, and how we'll be feeling, and that it's safe. I was so stressed that I will die because I had all the myths in my head. It was many years ago, and there was no such groups like now they are. And because I still have these feelings in me, and this drives me to help every person who is contacting us, even during the weekends, the holidays, during the night, to answer the phone and really give this calm and let the people to not afraid of taking pills.
Thank you, Justina. Thank you so much. I would say big applause for Justina, for all our panelists, for these incredible stories. And I think, I mean, this is a real showcase, and it's a real call also to all of us. You know, it's possible. You can actually reach things. You can help people. You can contribute to change the world every day a little bit. If you get active, if you support these organizations, if you get active yourself, it's super inspiring, at least for me it is, and I take away a lot. I don't know, how is it about you, Terry? Please comment.
Absolutely. And instead of saying something, I would actually like to have another round of applause for each of them, if that's okay. So please give a very, very big applause to Dominika, to Nina, to Jana, and to Justina.
Respect, I would say. I would stand up for all four of them, huh? Maybe we give them this respect. Fantastic. And thanks for sharing with us your experiences. In French, we say chapeau.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time to ask questions, but I think the four of them will still be around for a little bit, so you can also bilaterally approach them. And then, Tom, what is going to happen next now?
As our next keynote speaker, another very impressive woman, and I must say, we're overwhelmed by the women that stand up and that stand with us on stage. I think this is so exceptional, and it's also learning for me as a male, obviously, person, it's very often women in our society that drive change, that move change, and that stand up for rights, for human rights, for women's rights, but also for environment, for climate, for everything that keeps our society going, also for future generations. Big respect for that. And so the next very inspiring woman that will hold the keynote speech here is, and I read, Hanna Maczynska. I hope I expressed it rightly now. Hanna Maczynska, she's known in Poland in the moment mostly as a commissioner for human rights, very much engaged into all the situations that we have seen on the Polish-Belarusian border when it comes to pushback of refugees, when it comes to real human suffering, children being pushed back, people dying in the forests, dying in the rivers. Please come up on stage and let us listen to your keynote speech, Dr. Hanna Maczynska. Give her a welcome applause.